My talk this morning is about reincarnation, not in the traditional sense of the life after death being a new life in a new body, but in the sense that in this one life that we have, we might experience many lives and many deaths. And I'm using the experiences of my own life. I've had many lives and many deaths, but I think I will bypass Shakespeare, who wrote that the coward dies 1,000 deaths and the valiant but one. What is this life about? HPB wrote of the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul towards the Dharma. And she wrote that we must pass through every elemental form of the phenomenal world and acquire individuality, first by natural impulse and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts. Now, I set a lot of store by Blavatsky's writing, because in my time I have looked at different religions and the history of religions. And if I look in the Secret Doctrine, HPB will have something to say about each of them. The writing in it by today's standards is a bit archaic, and the tone is academic, and the subject area is vast, but it is an invaluable reference book. How do we know that our self-induced and self-devised efforts are helping us to find our individuality on that pilgrimage? All we know for certain is that we are on the way and we are in the process, because we must have passed through some of the elemental forms of the world. Have I already been a cabbage, and then a sheep, and then a horse? We need to know how to find our individuality. Are there signposts? Are there guidelines? We had an interesting discussion on this very subject at one of our lodge meetings in Bolton. The talk had been about the role of the planets in the history of the Earth, and it had focused on Velikovsky and his book, Worlds in Collision. The discussion afterwards, though, was not about the much maligned Velikovsky, but about the role of the planets in our own lives. Not the relationship of Mars with Earth, but the relationship of the planets with ourselves. Astrology. See, one person said, the configuration of the planets at the time of our birth set not only our star sign with its characteristics, but also our destiny. We were tied to the plough of fate. Our life was predetermined. There is no escaping it. And of course, it was a meeting of theosophists. There were murmurs of assent and murmurs of dissent, and they all bubbled to the surface. And the counter-argument was, we have free will. If there was a destiny, we had the freedom to go against it. We can set our own path through life. We are not tied so completely to the planet and the cosmos. And then there was a third argument, karma. The third argument was about karma. The shadow of karma was with us in the life, and our life was set by the actions of a previous incarnation. So we pilgrims, on our way to the Dharma, are either following the path of our destiny, as set by the astrological birth sign, or we are free agents in the world, or our life is a journey set by karma. How much of our life's pilgrimage is changed or challenged by those self-induced or self-devised efforts as we build our individuality? And add to this, Blavatsky also writes about the silent watcher and the shadow. The silent watcher is the mythical guardian who stands in the cosmic darkness at the edge of the Dharma light. And the watcher is a beacon to guide lost souls across the edge of the darkness into the light. And it's ready for the light itself, she says, but it denies itself for the benefit of others. And that rather reminded me of the Bodhisattva, who goes right to the edge and then denies it and returns to help humanity. So I think if all goes wrong with our life, we can think of the silent watcher who's beckoning us at the last moment as we trudge through the wilderness of ignorance, loaded up with destiny and karma and the fruits of self-induced and self-devised life plan. We are pilgrims on a journey, not only going from life to life through seemingly endless rebirths. Because if we look back on our own lives, this life we are living now, it might contain a series of births and deaths and rebirths. And we can probably divide it up into chapters or into episodes. There have been changes that have started a new chapter that are self-induced, or changes that appear to have been accidental, or just caused by chance, or maybe fate. For some, there may be only a few episodes or chapters. For others, perhaps many. What was the cause behind each change, which set a new chapter or a new episode to be written? Looking back, we can decide whether it was destiny or a self-devised plan or karmic influence beyond our control in the present life. Now, I can only speak for my own pilgrim journey so far. I've had an adventurous life. I feel I've had many incarnations within this life I'm living now. And there are turning points leading to new chapters. How have I arrived here? Has my destiny led me through all these chapters, or did I abandon my destiny somewhere along the way and go with free will? Was one of those self-induced or self-devised decisions simply wrong? I might have gone way off course, and there's not much hope for me in the next life. Or I could argue my path is karmic, that not only does karma act through our incarnations life by life, but it also works through this one existence, this one round. We could say that each chapter of our lives is itself subject to karma. Each chapter appears on the ledger as a debit or a credit, and we are either building up sorrow or building up merit for our next chapter or episode. Now, in my life, I spent my childhood at boarding school from the age of just before 7 until I was 17. Afterwards, I went to sea for a while. Then I went into the army for a few years. I was an office worker. Then I worked in the petrochemical and the oil industry for many years, and I've been a Unitarian minister for the last 30 years. I've been married 3 times, and the question I asked myself, is there a pattern? How is my pilgrimage going? Where am I? And I say yes. Looking back, I can see that some of the turning points have had significant consequences and changed the theme of my pilgrimage story. So my talk becomes an exploration of parts of my pilgrimage, and it's based on my own experiences and thoughts in relation to the life that I have lived so far. And yes, in my life, I have chopped and changed quite a bit. And I feel my life has been a series of lives, a series of incarnations within a single life. I reflect, and I see I've had an interesting life. And I've reached an age in years now where life is actually good. I live in a beautiful area You wouldn't believe it, but I live in Bolton, and it is a beautiful area where we live. A river flows just behind our house, and along its banks a long-distance footpath. I can walk deeper into the Lancashire Hill Country, or I can amble my way along the river into the heart of Manchester. But I don't need to do that because the station's only half a mile away, and I can travel by train anywhere in the city region for £10 a year. Our nearest supermarket is half a mile in the other direction, and we walk along the river through the Arboretum to reach it. I cannot complain. How have I arrived in this happy place? Was it destiny? Was it free will? Was it karma? And an important question for each of us. When does the pilgrimage begin? See, HPB writes, the pilgrimage is always there. It's the primeval urge of the spirit within us. It runs through life to life. We are born to be pilgrims. But when do we realize we are pilgrims? When do we realize we are on a spiritual path, nominal rather than phenomenal? For some, the awakening might be through nurture, or others, it might be that light bulb moment, a sort of road to Damascus experience. In our meditation group, we talk about the spiritual body that makes us who we are. It's part of a triad. We have a physical body that everyone recognizes. We have a thinking body that works things out. We have an emotional body that more often than not, people don't recognize because we keep it hidden. And this emotional body is our first line of defense in everything, and it's the most vulnerable. The vulnerable body is supported by the spiritual body when we know we've got a spiritual body. And the spiritual body doesn't have to be religious, but it is our pilgrim body. And when the spiritual body is awake, the whole unit becomes strong. George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, one of my heroes, said that most people were spiritually asleep. Their pilgrimage is in the material world. People might suffer a life of turmoil for years, have vulnerable emotions that affect their self-confidence. And so often we allow our emotional body to be a judge, condemning us as inadequate or inferior. We're like Ofsted, inadequate, surviving, doing okay. We need to live our emotional lives by the new Ofsted rules. That is, an examination and a detailed report of success and failure. The person who has suppressed emotions or has almost a negligible emotional body is most likely to be a narcissist. If the spiritual body has not been nurtured, that moment may come when it awakes. And then, from then on, life seems to change for the better. And the emotional body is a complex part of ourselves. It could behave according to destiny. One of the talks given to our Bolton Lodge was about human design. Who's heard of that? Well, I fell for it in a big way. The time, date, and place of birth of a person puts them into a category. And the chart I was given put me into the category of a projector. And I certainly feel that I fit the mould. It says I enjoy some kind of leadership role. That's why they made me the treasurer. That I'm analytical, that I'm sensitive to emotions and atmospheres. I suppose they couldn't say I was rubbish, otherwise I might sue them. The chart of my human design, according to their website, is based on astrology for destiny and the chakras for emotions. You can go on the website and it'll give you a chart. It's fascinating. But it says, my emotional strong parts and my emotional weak points are based on each chakra, and there are energy channels running between them all, strong or weak. Consequently, I would relate positively to those people who strengthen my weak channels or benefit from my strong ones. Easy to be very dominant as well, like that. I like it because it makes me more aware of myself as a person in relation to other people. We are all linked by our charts, it says. I could look back and say, oh yes, my destiny was always to be a projector. One of the characteristics of the projector, they say, is that life is in episodes. The projector, it says, is a hermit who sits on the roof for the first few decades of life. And when they're in their early middle age, there comes a moment of enlightenment. They become aware of their qualities. They wake up to being a spiritual person connected in the web of existence. They step down from the roof and into their role in life. Looking back, I can say, oh, yes, that was me. See, I'd been brought up in the Church of England, but I abandoned it when I went into the army, because you can't turn the other cheek and love your enemy when you're training to kill them. It was incompatible with faith. And looking back, I hadn't completely shaken that religion off. In midlife, I came to attend a Unitarian chapel. I had to go because my daughter was a Brownie. She said, I'm carrying the flag, you've got to watch me. So I went into this chapel. So it's an accident. But there, my spiritual self did awake. My Christian faith was more content with reason as a tool to understand scriptures and life, to understand scriptures and life, rather than the church with its rules telling me what was true and what wasn't. So eventually I shook myself free of the traditional church altogether. Now, was it by chance that I went to that Unitarian chapel, or was it fate? Something to do with my destiny? Or was it karmic influence? A person's fate is written in the stars, say the destiny scribes. In that moment, the planets, the stars, sun and moon are in a set configuration, and they stamp the new arrival with what seems like a barcode. And each one of us is unique. I think most people feel some affinity to their zodiacal sign. I used part of this in a sermon last Sunday in Wigan. And I said, who here is a Pisces? No one said a word. Who here knows their sign? They all sat on their hands. But I didn't believe them. And not only our destiny, but physically, we are unique. Fingerprints, DNA, iris patterns, all unique. And so is our character. We are unique individuals, but we also carry looks and mannerisms from the generations before us, and we will pass them on to future generations. And on top of that, as it was said in our meeting, the stars set our destiny. And maybe he was right. There were changes on my pilgrimage. Doors opened or barriers fell down, and there I was, a trained Unitarian minister, and here. And how I got there, no one really knows. Is it destiny or fate? And what a circuitous route. Why all the chapters or episodes beforehand? Are we held back in our destiny? What could possibly hold us back? HPB writes about the shadows, or the brothers of the shadows, and they are elemental forces from nature that basically are negative. And in some cases, the shadows, she says, have human form. And in the Mahatma letters to AP Synod, the brothers of the shadow, our greatest, most cruel, and why not confess, our most potential enemies. He stated that in theosophical literature, defines the brothers of the shadow or darkness as those who work actively against the positive forces of planetary evolution and for purely selfish ends, or more technically, as those who occupy themselves with activities lying outside the plans of the hierarchy and the purposes of the Lord of the planetary ray. Now, maybe it's being a bit conceited to say that some power was working against me and was trying to prevent me from fulfilling my destiny. Or are these powers working on a global scale and not interested in an individual life, unless that individual is a leader in the world, a Gandhi or a Kennedy or a Martin Luther King? We as individuals are caught up in the cosmic power struggle of the good against evil, or the good, as I prefer to say, against the negative. When our pilgrimage has moments of success and moments of failure or setbacks, is this because of this karmic spiritual struggle, or is it just karma working itself out? One of the YouTube channels I came across, the speaker said, "There's no destiny. The stars and the planets are nothing to do with you, not for anyone. Our purpose in life is to set our own destiny and work towards achieving it." And to me, that seems to be the doctrine of the parasite, as it contains nothing spiritual. I have a theory that humanity is a parasite. We've arrived on this earth and we're busy consuming it, and in the end, we'll consume it all. Either we'll die or we'll have to go and find another planet. And the only thing that destroys my argument is that there are good people in the world. Not all parasites are bad. But if it was true, there is no destiny, I could say, well, there's no pilgrimage either, and I could abandon the spiritual quest. Look back at our lives and the chapters or the episodes we have worked through. Can every single one of them be down to free will? Have we made conscious decisions every time, every change, every move? Have we made a conscious decision to react to every challenge? See, we believe we cannot choose. We cannot choose who we are born to. We cannot choose our birth environment. We cannot choose our siblings. We cannot choose our education until the end of our childhood. Free will is limited until we leave the nest. And then look at the free will decisions we make. Further education, career path. We choose to marry or not, who to marry, who to be our partner. What significant decisions have we made that changed the course of our lives? Looking back, we can say there was no element of fate in our story. Can we say there was no fate, just opportunities we took advantage of, or there were accidents of life that affected us? There might have been setbacks, but can we say they had nothing to do with fate, nothing to do with destiny? In 1980, I was working for Shell Chemicals on a plant that made polyethylene. And then rumours started. There was going to be a major redundancy. Now, I had a wife and 2 kids. Where else did they make polyethylene? Where could I go? Saudi Arabia. So I moved to get myself a job in Saudi Arabia on a chemical plant. And after a lot of worry and waiting, one of the agents offered me a job with Aramco, the main oil and chemical company there. I did all the medicals, I went for interviews, and bingo, the job was mine. I flew there. It's a great adventure for me. I flew there via Paris and Istanbul, was processed on one side of the country, and then sent to the Red Sea town of Yanbu to work on a brand new chemical plant. Now, they're quite strict in Saudi. If you can't do the job, they send you straight back home. Welders were tested when they got there. If they failed the weld test, straight back on the plane and gone. The man with the clipboard at Yambo was sending the new arrivals to workplaces. Welders over there, instruments over there, electrical people over there. Tony McNeile, training school. Oh, I thought, thank heavens for that. I'll get on a course to learn about the equipment that I'm going to use here in the processes. So I go over to the training school. Course? They said, no, you are the new instructor. You can start tomorrow by teaching a class of trainees how an electric motor works. Well, I wasn't going to say I'd never done it before. It was a big transition in my life. I could do it. I could write on a blackboard. I could teach. I wrote manuals. I prepared timetables. It was an accidental opportunity. Now, was it all a consequence of my free will? Or was I working out my karma? See, I suppose when we talk about free will, we think of independent thought. Some things are achieved by willpower, which according to HPB is a spiritual quality. Never thought of that before. In The Secret Doctrine, she talks about the power of the will, which is a part of willpower and which is also part of free will. And there are 6 primary forces of will in nature. Sakti, she calls them, the supreme power. Then the power of the intellect, the will to learn, the will to find knowledge. The power that is muscular, super strength. Bridget was telling us yesterday, her car rolled back on her and trapped her leg in the garage, and it could have smashed her to pieces. Found a strength within her, but pushed the car forward again and rescued herself. That inner will came, and she was able to do it. There's the power of thought, making things happen. The power that relates to the internal to the external, the work of the yogi. And the power of speech and music, the creative and the demonstrable will to do things. So willpower links to free will. And that makes free will not independent of the pilgrimage, but part of it. Will, willpower, and free will are all part of the 7th ray, I read. Free will is just part of the self-induced creation of individuality, but it is also a responsibility within the pilgrimage. And I wonder how that relates to destiny. And karma is the 3rd force in our individual pilgrimages. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is standing in the chariot with Arjuna on the eve of the battle. We all know the story. And Arjuna doubts about fighting members of his own family. And Krishna says, you cannot avoid fighting because Arjuna has a duty to do things as they truly are. Ignorance or not knowing things as they truly are and craving are the chief causes of karma. Not doing things as they truly are and craving are the chief causes of karma, according to the Sutra on Dependent Origination. But karma is not a judge, the teachings of Buddhism say. It is simply a consequence of what we do. I read this recently and found it a relief. Some years ago, we had a holy man come and talk to our lodge. We used the chapel instead of the hall as a mark of respect to this man. And we sat him in God's chair, and we sat around him in a half circle. God's chair was a big, large chair behind the table in the chapel. And one of the ladies said to me once, you can't use that chair because it's God's chair. I said, well, everyone called it after that. So the holy man sat in God's chair, and he was asked about karma. And we were thinking particularly of a couple we knew. This couple seemed to live such a good life, blameless. They volunteered, they worked in the community, all the pluses. And yet they had awful problems, particularly with their families and particularly with their health. And the holy man said, oh, they suffered for the things they had done in a previous life or lives. But in our life's pilgrimage, we learn that karma is not a court and that the life we are leading is not a punishment. Karma is a natural law of cause and effect. Every action will have a consequence. The pilgrim's journey in this life cannot escape the law of karma. And the Buddha taught that we inherit characteristics from our parents, but we are also born with innate abilities that are purely our own. Our karmic tendencies are stronger than what we have inherited. Does that mean karma affects only our social and economic position in the realm of existence? We are put here according to our karma, and from there we continue the pilgrimage. We either build up merit or we build up sorrow for ourselves, not in this life, but in the next. If we don't work at improving our lives, if we don't work at doing what is true rather than what is false, we might go back to being a horse. But if we do well, in the next life, we will be higher up the social economic scale, able to do more good. It infers that karma is like a cosmic recording machine, taking in the actions of our lives. It doesn't interfere with life as it is being lived. Just at the end of the recording, you get a score, plus or negative. If I'm reborn as an orphan with a lisp, that's karma. The planets might have assigned me my destiny as an artist or a farmer or both. My spirit knows I'm on the pilgrimage. It's up to me then to move forward and develop my individuality when I wake up and realize I am a spiritual being. If I have children who don't turn out well, or wives who wander off or throw me out, I cannot say it's karma. It is life. If it is all chaos and change, what I have to do is to live truly. I have to obey the law that says, when challenged, to act or live truly, because doing nothing is not an option. I can say, yes, I've made mistakes in my life. I've gone the wrong way sometimes. I feel that life has cheated me sometimes. I could say, oh, it's all down to karma, that I was predestined to fail sometimes and predestined to succeed sometimes. But I have my doubts about that. I should not blame karma. I came to the conclusion that what I have done and what I have achieved is of my own making. If my destiny was to be a minister, I'm pleased about that. I can only assume it was because it has worked out okay, and I'm happy in that role. Our role in life is to find our way onto that spiritual pilgrimage. And what we achieve or don't achieve, well, that may well be destiny. The way we build our individuality by those self-devised or self-induced means is the most important, and how we use our free will, or better still, how we will ourselves to live truly, and how we will ourselves to be on the pilgrim's spiritual path. The actions and consequences that go with our journey through this life are just that. We have the will, the mechanisms, and the tools within us for the pilgrim journey. And the one thing to end with, pilgrimages are never easy. They're not designed to be. We just have to live the adventure of them. Thank you all.